Welcome, everybody. Career Happy Hour. It's Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. It's good to see you. I know it's been a while. It's been like a week. It was a holiday last week. There weren't really a whole lot of us here last Friday because of the Labor Day weekend. So it's good to see you all. I am sporting because it's football season here in the United States for college, I am wearing my school colors. So that's good. You're welcome to wear your school colors on Career Happy Hour because after all, this session or this meetup here today, every Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time, is your time. And it's time for me to give back to the community that's helped me so much here primarily on LinkedIn and in my network. I've had a number of people that have been really, really helpful and supportive to me. So I just wanted to say thank you through this particular session. So if you don't know me, I'm Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value to find good opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. That's through a pragmatic process of branding, right? Coming up with a product or service for yourself that fits who you are. Planning, meaning scheduling and putting together a plan and kind of mapping out where you want to go. Some might call that a career map or so forth. And then the third step is proactive and effective, networking, meeting people. That's why this particular community even exists in the first place, is because it's my attempt in some small way to get people connected. That's why I really encourage you to put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. It gives us an opportunity to see you and to connect with you. And perhaps you might meet somebody through this session today, whether it's live or in the replay, that could help you in some capacity. And so our advocacy, or at least our anticipation, is if you reach out to somebody on these sessions, then you will have an opportunity to have a network conversation that you haven't yet had before. And so do that. Leave your LinkedIn profile in the chat. If you want to contact me, it's very easy to find me. I'm not hard to find. Andrew Beach anywhere on social media is likely me, and specifically on LinkedIn, that would be Branding Dynamo. So that's every pretty much every social network that I have has that same handle on it, except for, of course, YouTube, because they don't give you those unless you have, I don't know, umpteen thousand subscribers and a bunch of watch hours. So I haven't yet attained that level of awesomeness. So if you want to subscribe to me on YouTube, I suppose you could do that. In fact, that's where all of the Career Happy Hour are archived. So you could go to my YouTube channel and you could get that information. And so the topic I was thinking about today is the future of your career. And the reason this is coming into my mind is because a lot of people don't think about what's happening in the marketplace and don't take time, maybe each week or a quarter or a year, to really say, where am I in my career? How am I doing? And what should I be doing differently? And this time of year is a good time to do that, to do, in what some circles you might call a retrospective. And so I'm kind of doing that now, looking at my year and in the ups and the downs, and where am I in my career? And am I satisfied? Am I not satisfied? What have I done well? What could I do better? It's often that organizations have some kind of performance management system set up already. So they, along with you, hopefully, cross your fingers, are actually doing the work of evaluating your performance on the job. And that certainly is appropriate. They want to make sure that you're doing things that are helping the company grow or make profit. And that's all logical and reasonable and expected in a corporate setting. What many people don't do is actually take a step back from that and make some decisions on their own career based on what they're trying to do. Good. STS Design LLC. I love it. It's always good to see Terry Smith here in the house, in the basement lounge. So at least that's what he has called it in the past. So welcome, Terry. Good to see you. You're more than welcome to hop on here if you want. Let's see. I'll get the there we go. I got the link to join. Let me see if I can share that over here on LinkedIn without making a giant mess of the live stream. I have a habit of doing that, I suppose. So I'll put join live. Remember, Terry, I think you have to copy and paste the link because LinkedIn, for whatever reason, doesn't allow hyperlinks in the chat. So it's weird, I know. Also put this on the restream chat. So you'll see that come from the host me on the other channels. Looks like that's now good going through to YouTube. It wasn't before. So good to see everybody. Welcome. It's Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time on September the 9th, 2022. Going into fall, red flag warnings, at least I saw here in Oregon for fires. So please, everybody stay safe out there. Do your best to protect your neighbors and so forth. What I'm suggesting is that each one of us take a moment and evaluate and decide for ourselves, how did we perform this year? How could we perform better this year? And how could we make that something that's a little bit more pragmatic for ourselves? And if our organizations aren't keeping score, then certainly we may have a way to do that. But let me get my headphones on because it looks like Terry's here. We're going old school today with the headphones. Make sure you have your HD settings on there, Terry. So, Terry Smith, sounds like there's some construction going on in your neck of the woods.
No, just my dog flipping out because the mail had just arrived.
Oh,
she seems to view that as some kind of invasion of our space, and so whenever it hits the mail slot, she attacks it. Which,
okay,
you know.
So you got the male. Do you got the female?
Yeah, just the female dog. She's on the loose.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about performance management. It's not something we really have talked about a lot in Career Happy Hour, but I want to take it from the perspective of the individual, because not every organization, well, let's be clear, not every organization operates the same way. Not every organization has a defined program that is working for both the employee and the organization. And it's not a perfect process. Not many leaders are good, I would say, at having those conversations. Are you on track? Are you not on track? Did we develop some appropriate objectives for you or not? And saying it's okay to change or modify those, and let's have regular conversation that way. Yeah. I'm going to presume that's the exception to the rule. Has that been your experience?
I think that's reasonable. Performance management conversations are really hard, because there's an awareness, I think, for a lot of managers that the performance of people on their teams is a reflection of themselves as managers and leaders, right? And so, managers who are reasonably self-aware and are conscious of that particular dynamic are hesitant to want to get into that conversation because they feel like, and I've heard this said often, that they feel like it's kind of a reflection on themselves. And so the challenge is to take both personalities out of the equation, right, in the performance management conversation. I mean, fundamentally, the vast majority of us want to do a good job in what we do. We have, some greater or lesser degree of skills and abilities to be able to do that. There's a lot of, I think anyway, a lot of emotional connection to the concept of how well I'm doing or how well I'm performing on work. And, at the same time, there's an emotional connection to the person who I report to that is, assessing or evaluating my work. Right. And so there are a lot of emotional connections that are involved in it. And really the key to it more than anything else is to really break it down to the work itself and not, reflecting on the individual necessarily. And that's hard because everybody has a tendency to say, well, how well I'm perceived as doing my work and accomplish my goals and objectives is a reflection of me personally,
right.
And
or based on, the quality of the relationship you have with your leader. And so I can see how that, much like hiring, might have some bias and some inclusion issues. Let's just put diversity and inclusion issues, right? That some people are the manager's pet, but I won't go into that. What I'm suggesting is that we can take some of these concepts and just apply them to ourselves outside of that context. And so have you seen individuals or situations where someone did a really good job of kind of mapping out their career and kind of evaluating it, or what sort of things have you seen people do that are really effective?
Yeah, I found that, and I would love to be able to say I'm good at this, but I'm not any better at it than I think most people are. But I think the key to it is a sense of intentionality, of putting in place, what is it that you want to accomplish, or what level of role do you want to engage by when, right? Because that then creates some sense of urgency and some sense of focus around a particular concept. There's a lot of dialogue out there, and this is, very, very much the case, that people change not just jobs, but actual careers several times in their career, right? And they make a shift from one kind of work to another kind of work or what have you. People who are intentional about that do that very intentionally. The probably the most intentional thing I can say about my career, for instance, is that I was intentionally not interested in niching into a particular industry, right? I wanted to have a broad base of experience in many industries to reach a point where I could be very sort of industry agnostic and, derive wisdom and knowledge from each of those experiences in industries that would form a larger perspective. That was sort of the scope of my intentionality. And it's probably safe to say I didn't really figure that out until about 20 years in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so there's more than one kind of diversity. In your case, you had diversity of experiences.
Right.
And that,
very much
to
so.
many organizations is highly coveted.
Right.
And the nice thing is, because you have those experiences, people seek you out for them.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't won't. And so
Yeah.
it kind of solves itself. It solves its own problem that way.
Yeah, it's interesting that way because, in fact, literally just in the last day or so, I was approached by, a consulting group that I know of here in town about a gig, doing some work for a small city in Southern Oregon, specifically the city government, and interestingly enough, I do actually have some experience in city government, but it literally goes back to my college days.
Mm.
But the amalgamation of experiences together form this sort of the story that I can tell that people know me for, that says, yeah, Terry, we'd love to see you step into this thing because we think you can help, so
Yeah.
so I think,
when you have a reputation, right, people will seek you out.
well, hopefully it's a good reputation.
Yeah, well, so the other side of that is you may be known for something you don't want to be known for anymore.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so if you've gotten to the point in your career where, yes, you were up to a certain point agnostic on industry, but now maybe you're not, there's an industry that you've now, I think, at least that I've observed, are focused on. And I think that might bear fruit if people actually focus in that kind of way. And so that to me is part of the intentionality that you mentioned, that if you focus on an industry, that's not a bad thing as long as you know what you're getting into and that's an industry you want to be in.
Right. I know people that have great depth of experience in one industry, and that's, led them to a very rich and fulfilling career, and that's great. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm simply saying that, the key to it more than anything else is intentionality, right? And not just kind of drifting along and kind of letting things happen for you, but to really put some thought around why you want those things to happen, or what those things are that you even want to happen, right? And
and being an analytical mindset person, I also think of how you measure your success.
Yeah.
Many organizations, if we look at performance management, I don't know if they have a 5-point scale or 4-point scale, or there's some measurement, and there may be even an objective, if you attain it, is leading to measurement on that scale of some kind. And so how can we do that to ourselves? I'm really struggling with that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, just on its own, the whole concept of sort of the, 4-point, 5-point, 7-point scale, whatever it is, that you want to apply, has its advantages and limitations, right? So I think we could have a whole conversation just about that. But But I think the premise is, when it's ideally sort of implemented, is that it's a measure of, you know, not only skill. So I'm going to go on a bit of a limb here. It's not only a matter of skill, but it's a bit a matter of will too. In other words, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, over the top, what are the implications, not only just for just your capabilities, but also for, the passion that you bring to the role, or the energy that you bring to the role, and, is that something that's even scalable? Can you say, on any given day, Terry's level of passion for the work he's doing is a 5, right? Or and conversely, there are other days where he just simply rolled out of bed this morning with, a bad attitude, let's say, and that will is just not there, right? And so the challenging part of it, in terms of that metric, from an objective point of view, is how you sort of bundle it with the more subjective aspects of desire and heart and energy and passion. Now, from a personal point of view, it's almost kind of flipped, in my opinion, right? That, you're, on a day-to-day basis, if I'm going to sort of measure and look back at the end of my day today and say, okay, today I had a day that was a 5. I was really engaged. I was really involved. I was really excited about what I was doing. And objectively, I got some things done. I got some interesting things accomplished, or I got some goals taken care of, or I got a project finished, or I got this, that, or the other thing, whatever it may be. You can say, okay, I felt really good. I felt like I had a personal energy sort of 5 day. Now, what are the metrics that back that up? And in some cases, there may not be any. It may just be, whatever it was. I just had a great day. I was feeling really good. I did this, I did that, or I didn't, but I still feel like I had a good day. That day was a 5 for me. And then on those days that, I can say, I got this done, or I got that done, I got that project resolved, I got that problem taken care of, I made that phone call that led to this thing. You can kind of map out and say, here are some things. And over time, if you're doing that, again, with that intentionality, if over time, as you're doing that, you start to see themes and patterns that emerge that kind of demonstrate the connection between your heart and your passion and the things that you're accomplishing on a daily basis, right? And that's a lot of work, but it is and it isn't. I mean, you can set up a way of just kind of keeping track of that stuff. So, at the end of the day, at 10 to 8 in the evening, you can sit down for that next 10 minutes and say, here's how I felt. Here's the proof, or maybe there is no proof, but I felt good. And then again, over time, what that starts to tell you is sort of what those patterns look like for you. What are the things that are consistently connected with that feeling really good, sort of that release of endorphin day?
I mean, it reminds me of, I think it's called the 5-minute journal. I don't know if you've seen this, but I mean, there's for everything, there is a solution on Amazon, I'm sure. And that's available for delivery today or tomorrow.
Right, for a price.
Right, exactly. But it's called the 5-minute journal. And so you start off the day and you just collect your thoughts about what you want to accomplish that day, and an affirmation. I want to be full of energy today, or I want to make a contribution to somebody today. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you spend another couple of minutes just jotting down how it went, and what went well, what did, so it's like a kick off your day and then a retrospective at the end of the day. And, it's just a way for you to journal if you're not good at it or disciplined enough at it. It doesn't take a whole lot of time.
Right. Is it kind of like almost like a checklist sort of?
No, it's just, if you go to their website and look at the journal, it literally is just a page that's got 5 questions on it. Oh. I think 5 questions. I'd have to go look. Well, the nice thing, I take it back. The nice thing about Amazon is they let you take a look inside the book. I'd hate to share my screen when I do this, but let me walk through the questions, and maybe that would be helpful. Yeah. So you at the top, you put the date. Below that, they have a quote, very simple. And then there's three answers to a question. I am grateful for fill in the blank with 3 things. Below that, the question is, what would make today great? And you write down 3 things. And then below that is daily affirmations. And so like a daily affirmation, I am something. I am a great presenter, or I'm a great coach, or I'm a great HR person, or I'm a whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love gardening, right? I'm a great gardener. Anyway,
Right.
and so that is all in kind of a lighter color at the
Mhm.
top. And
Hmm.
then and it's got a sun at the top, and then at the bottom it has like a picture of a crescent moon, and it says 3 amazing things that happened today.
Hmm.
And then how could I have made today better is the thing at the bottom. So that's kind of how it's set up, and you don't have to buy their book to answer those questions. You
Yeah.
can you can do a Google search and find those questions and
Oh,
start
sure.
filling them out.
Right.
And so that's something in addition to maybe what I'm thinking of is, hey, if you looked at your day or even your week or your month or your quarter, however you want to set it up in terms of timeline, I don't think that matters as much. And just decide for yourself, what did you do that was great? What did you like about it? And how much of that do you want to do again?
Yeah.
And if you just ask yourself those simple questions, I think that's going to lead you in a direction of self-advocacy, because I think people miss that part is they say, hey, I'm just doing a job, and that may be valid, but but the thing is, you also want to be happier in your job. And if that is something you want, some people don't, I get it. They think work should be work. It doesn't need to be fun. It's work, right?
Right.
And
Or
I don't take that, so I'm not the pessimist, I'm the optimist,
yeah.
at least on that side of the spectrum, to say, I have a little bit of input on my happiness, and I can advocate for myself with the people I work around or with, or even when I'm choosing projects, right? Or clients to coach, I can decide to say, no, not
Yeah.
interested. And so I think that's kind of what you're drawing at too, is that once you've identified what that is and you've measured or been able to measure your satisfaction in doing it, and you start getting some traction, it gives you a lot more opportunities or options to say no.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to be in, and it's hard to get there, but it is possible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it does is as you kind of develop that rhythm, that approach to things, it also helps you see opportunities that you may not have seen before, right?
Mhm.
Because as you start to really check into whether it's the 5-minute journal data, or the 10-minute look back at the end of the day, or however you choose to frame how you gather the information, and you start to see these themes that reoccur, that can lead to ideas of ways to do things and things to go do, and incorporate into your life that you just may not have noticed before. But by just
Yeah.
virtue the sort of this intentional approach of you know capturing these bits of data, you
Mhm.
start to see those patterns, and all of a sudden you're heading in a direction that you're like, oh, I never knew that about myself. But now that I've really sat down and thought about it a little bit, and it takes maybe a little bit of time each day, and you start to form this picture, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I learned a long time ago that I've never really pursued, maybe to the extent that I would have liked to at the time, but was that I really personally enjoy, putting on large events, right?
Hmm.
Putting on large meetings or large scale, gatherings of people for purposes of, learning or what have you. Um, and and just the whole, planning it, making sure this and that are in place, and then launching it the day of, maybe doing an invocation or kickoff, and then being part of the whole process of making sure things are running smoothly, get to the end, everybody's had a great experience, and so on, right?
Mhm.
That's something I really kind of groove on. But apart from being called upon occasionally to do those things as a part of other work, I've never really focused in and said, I'm going to go do this as a career. I've always
Mm.
sort of taken it that, hey, this is like a nice sidebar activity as part of my regular duties that I happen to enjoy. It's
Yeah.
like an extra. I'm going along like this, and then boop, and then back to the, and then boop, and so on.
Nice.
So, but
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that just popped into my mind as I start thinking about those things is you start noticing these things you want to do. It's easier for you to advocate for it,
right,
right? And
yeah,
so as you're meeting people or collaborating with new clients, or even in your job, you could advocate for wanting to do larger projects or doing events.
yeah,
And now that we're kind of, I would say, at the tail end of the pandemic for the most part, I think those kind of things are possible.
yeah,
And so that becomes more of a reality. And I think organizations are becoming a little more, I wouldn't say lax, but certainly more flexible
Yeah.
in allowing people to be in person. And so that's certainly something that I would pursue and find an avenue for. And the nice thing is you're now pursuing something that matters to you, and it makes the pursuit a lot more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's hard work.
Well, the other thing that's intriguing about it too is the whole context of the pandemic, right? Because it has evolved the way that we think about these kind of things, kind of creating a different sort of landscape than what we've been accustomed to. And so the trick with that is to say, okay, what can I make out of that that's new and different, that yet speaks to those same kinds of things that I'm intrigued with, putting together gatherings of people, for example.
Yeah.
Different animal today than it was 3 years ago, right? I mean, nobody thought twice about putting a bunch of people on a plane, getting them into a hotel somewhere.
I mean, I don't think it's as different as you presume. Certainly you're going to get a group of people that just won't come. And
right.
So the delivery mechanism might change, right? So you may have an in-person and then a hybrid optional, right? And you see how it goes. A lot of people are piloting that kind of concept now. And what they're finding is that a lot of people want to be in person. They're okay with that.
And there's a lot of great reasons why people would, and just as the same as there's a lot of great reasons why people wouldn't, want to be there too, and you have to be respectful of that, which again is a dynamic that I think has more of an influence than maybe we want to give it credit for, because, you could, pre-pandemic, you could kind of default people into, look, we're all going, everyone has to be there, right? It's okay. I get it. You don't like getting on an airplane. Be like John Madden and take the train, whatever, but,
or get a bus,
or something, but, and now I think the flip of that has been a greater degree of respect for those same kind of boundaries that people have, and a greater willingness to operate with, in respect or in honor of those boundaries, right? I have a good friend who is a doctor, and he and I talk about that one of the things we do in our world is we used to go to concerts. We love to go to concerts, see shows, see this band, that band, whatever. Neither of us are yet comfortable with the idea of a concert indoors yet. Now, we're getting better on the whole outdoors thing, right? And this is just an example of this, but we're still not quite there yet on the notion of a crowded house with lots of people around us, and for pandemic-based reasons. Now translate that into a sort of a corporate environment, right, where you're trying to build those kinds of sort of community-based opportunities, right, and how you expand everybody's way of thinking to include that virtual environment, is not only in the terms of just how the thing is delivered, but how the interactions are created, right? And how you go about engaging with people, it's a very different thing. And so that's where I think, some of the intrigue comes that wasn't there before, is just how you manage that sort of scenario.
Right. Well, and so if you go pursue those things, coming back to kind of our topic here, I think one of the nice things about capturing data, like you suggested, maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever, is that you now have artifacts. And because you have artifacts, you can now go to your leader, or you can start advocating for yourself. But you could also, during review time, if they haven't kept up on their one-on-ones, or we're doing any kind of regular touch base with you to make sure you're on track to meet your goals, you have data to support what you've been doing. And it gives you ammunition, I guess you could say, in a figurative sense, to ask for increase in pay or increase in benefits or different job responsibilities or whatever, right? I see things going this direction. And I did supported a couple of group events, and it seems to be getting traction, and I'd like to invest some of my time in that. Let's say, I don't know, 20% of my time in that activity. With your permission, I'd like to go that direction to support the company in this kind of way, because I see these results come from that.
Right. And then the logical next step in that conversation is, and I see this activity continuing to occur and evolve and so forth. And I feel like what I've done in these specific examples is a good stepping stone into doing more of that kind of work and potentially really adding value to the company because the company seems to be heading in that direction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, company direction, overall perspective, my experience, specific examples of what I've done, I think that all plays together. And you're right. The person, the person, me, the worker, right? The person doing this work, I owe it to myself to, be conscious of those things and see where I can take it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I think that is really important in the performance management relationship is that there's always a sort of this natural tendency to say, well, you're my manager, you're supposed to figure out what my career looks like. Not really. No, this is really about you and what you want to do and what makes you successful. And I'm happy to collaborate with you on that to help you gain that understanding and help us steer you in the right direction. But ultimately, you're the person that owns that. And that's an important element.
And everybody should have that concept, right? I think the challenge is when you see the mindset, and I'm not saying this is all, but the mindset of people coming out of school or college or entering the workforce is, hey, I've been told what to do all my life, or what's right, or this is the thing, and so I just want you to tell me what to do and I'll go do it, right? And breaking that kind of habit or that mindset is a challenge. And some people are just built that way, right? They're just built to be told. And so, and if you're trying to self-direct your career, that's not something you're going to be inclined to do.
Right. Well, and the very nature of the way school is structured, we spend the first 12 years of our life, if we go all the way through college or high school, and then another maybe 4 or more years in college, is all about a very structured process and about doing things a certain set of ways. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's how you're socialized, and so, that concept of sort of taking ownership of where you go from here sort of gets dropped on you. I mean, there may be some conversation about it in, when you're in high school, maybe a little more conversation about it in college, but fundamentally those institutions are factories, and they are factories of producing results, i.e. high school graduates, college graduates, et cetera. Right. So as with any factory, or any system, there's a certain set of processes you go through and a certain set of metrics you achieve to be able to demonstrate your that you got that, at least that you went through the factory, maybe not necessarily that you mastered it, but that you went through it. Right. So now all of a sudden you're being told, well, now it's your thing. You figure it out.
Yeah. You figure it out.
And that's a challenge.
And I'm sure many leaders feel like it's their obligation to make sure somebody is effectively engaged in that way. Mm-hmm. And so they end up telling people that what they should be doing.
Yeah.
and now we've established a baseline for that relationship that might not be healthy.
Right.
Or even helpful.
Right. Well, it's just in a certain way, it's sort of a repetition of what those self-same managers went through when they were in school.
Totally. So they're just emulating what they know.
Right. And so it takes that next step of creativity and self-awareness to say, I'm going to step out of that. Right. And I think that's the fun part, really, in a lot of employment relationships, is getting organizations to that point of being able to say, yeah, let's help people make this thinking real for them. Right. Let's help them, in the context of, we still got to deliver, we've still got to, make our numbers for the quarter, or, whatever your set of measurements are, is this sort of this holistic thing around, how do we do that in the context of helping people, become more self-aware? Well, the payoff is that self-awareness, in theory, leads to a more advanced understanding of how to do your work, more advanced understanding of who you are in relationship to the organization. And that in turn improves efficiencies and effectiveness and so on. That's that theory, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and these are all the reasons why I encourage people to, if there's something good that you did and someone acknowledged you or something and you got kudos for it, if there's an email or something, just shoot that over to your private address, as long as you're not capturing any intellectual property or trade secrets. And, just a reminder, just send it to your private email. You'll have a capture of that. I also encourage people, hey, once a quarter. What do companies do once a quarter? Publicly traded companies, Terry.
Yeah, they report to the street.
They report to the street. Okay. And so why shouldn't we report to our own street? Right. And so,
that.
If I'm going to report to my own street, what do I report out? Well, I could visit my resume. That's my street, right? I could visit my LinkedIn profile. That's my street, right? Or I could start cataloging some of my projects in a 3-ring binder. I mean, I don't care what you do, but if you think that your employment is contingent upon you making it through a quarterly announcement, I have some news. Many layoffs are timed to a quarterly announcement. And so
yes.
One of the reasons you want to do this, if you want a little painful motivation, is to avoid getting laid off, because you have become so valuable to your organization in many different ways that they could, not that they wouldn't, but they couldn't afford or would lose more in separating you than they would in keeping you. So
yeah, exactly. It's the trade-off becomes much more negative for them to take that action than it does to not, right? So, or stated differently, it's a more positive outcome for them not to take that action with you than to take that action with you.
Right.
So,
precisely.
That's a great observation. I love that. I love your context on that. Reporting to the street. What's your street? Boy, there's a whole book in there, right?
We could do it, Terry.
Report to your street. I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to report
awesome.
my quarterly street. Anyway.
Yeah, report your quarterly objectives. How did you meet the last 12 weeks? What did you do in that hockey stick period that was really sensational?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you could set up your own accountability systems, right? A partner, right? Andrew's got a Terry, and Terry's got a Jimmy or a Jenny or whatever. You can work this out to where you just report to somebody. Where I guess it could be a spouse, could be your 4-legged friend. I don't really care, as long as you have somebody that you're reporting it to. And that you feel some accountability.
Well, that's what a lot of executive coaching is based on, is that notion of putting it in a context that somebody in a C-suite would understand, right? Which is that sort of that quarterly objectives, right? So a lot of executive coaches that I know tend to like to use that model of saying, okay, if we're going to do this for a long period of time, let's set some real objectives and goals so that you feel like you're working towards something. You've got that reportability and accountability that is a part of what you do on your daily routine, but applied to you as a mentee or a coachee or whatever the is for that, right? And that is really interesting. In fact, there's a group out of Utah that does very much that kind of thing, where they contract with their executive leaders that they're coaching for, say a 1 year or 2 year period, and then they set it up based on quarterly objectives, right? And then what are the metrics that demonstrate the objectives being met? Very, very useful mentality. So, I mean, you're on the road to executive coaching here, Andrew.
Totally. Well, I mean, here's the thing: is that coaching is about transformation, and if you're not being transformed, if that's based on an objective, fine. But if there isn't some objective inherently in need of some sort of support that way, then you may not need coaching, right?
Yeah.
Although I believe everybody should have a coach, but it's good to have that sounding board.
Yeah.
That voice in the ether kind of thing. Yeah. Just saying, hey, what about this or what about that? Just somebody to think about, to help you think about what it is you're doing or maybe not doing, what you should start and what you should stop doing, and having some accountability that way.
Yep. Start, stop, keep.
Is that a thing?
Oh yeah. That's so we were talking about performance management a little while ago. And that's a tool that a lot of folks, well, I shouldn't say a lot of folks, but I've run into some, and I've tended to want to embrace that in some of the performance management coaching that I do, is, particularly if you're doing, if you're coaching somebody on, shoot, I had a great thought in the diet of loneliness. But if you're coaching or if you're doing performance management particularly in a high volume production oriented environment, it's really useful, to frame the conversation around three concepts. What are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? And what are you going to keep doing? And then another coaching colleague of mine introduced a fourth element to it that I thought was really interesting. That was, what are you going to develop doing, right? Or not develop, but what's the word to use? Enhance. What are you going to enhance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So start, stop, keep, and enhance. Wow, that was really a wow moment. And that was like maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago that she rolled that one on me, and it was really, really cool.
Nice.
But yeah, so the idea that let me try again. The idea of those concepts of, what are the things I know I'm doing that I want to keep doing that are doing well?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things I should probably stop doing just because they're not adding value? And then what are some things that I could start doing to fill the void of the things I'm going to stop doing, right? That add value. And so, it's a really, really simple, concept. And I've seen it work incredibly well particularly in manufacturing, which is a lot of my background, where it's simply a matter of, these are the things that we know that we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're sort of not transferable. They're not expendable. So in that context, what can we start doing that we're not doing right now? What can we legitimately stop doing that would, improve processes or enhance timing or, any of 100 different things? And then what is it that we know that we're just doing really well? We want to keep doing it, right? And then there's that fourth element of, okay, well, are there other things that we could do that we're doing now that we know we could do better?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take those 3 or 4 pieces and just kind of work them through, and this applies to your own life as well, what are some things that I could, what do I want to keep doing? What should I start doing that I haven't been doing? Kind of going back to that idea of what have I been keeping track of that may be something that enhances my world. And then, when am I going to stop smoking, or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Or lose a few pounds, right?
Or lose a few pounds, yeah.
Or whatever,
Know
right?
that one well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so using that as a really, really simple framework. And then, you could even kind of layer on that what we were talking about earlier about that sort of that reflection and that, observation that leads to understanding more about patterns of behavior and things that you find that you really like doing that you maybe didn't know that you really like doing, but lo and behold, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that starts to fill that bucket of, start doing and keep doing, right? And then
Right.
it also encourages the thinking around, well, if I'm going to do that, what am I going to stop doing that I really don't need to do anymore, or that I don't want to do anymore, and I just haven't admitted to myself that I don't want to do it anymore,
Yeah.
So,
well, and honestly, there has to be in everybody's life more things to be done than can physically be accomplished in the time provided.
Yeah.
And we need to be honest, at least with ourselves, about how much we can actually get done in that context.
Yeah.
Because what is it? I don't know if you've read Getting Things Done.
It seems before. Like I did.
Yeah. So one of the things he said in there is you could do everything, but you can't, or you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Right.
Right. And so the concept there is, hey, you have to look at all the things that are available for you to do. And then you start with what's most important. And if you don't get the stuff on the bottom done, it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's where prioritization is really helpful, and having, a coach or some person to reflect your thoughts and ideas off of is really helpful. So
yeah, I have a client that we're working on a program right now around some basic management development. And one of the things, so we'll be doing some training with their shift leads and their shift supervisors, starting probably in October, around, some really, really basic concepts, because these are folks that by and large, it's their first time supervising people and so forth. And so what are some just key things? And you hit on one a moment ago when you said prioritization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just figuring out that, that model of start, stop, keep, and, and really then looking at what it is that you're doing and being very honest about, prioritizing. And so as I'm thinking about it, the start, stop, keep model will probably be part of that portion of the training.
Yeah, good. And sales should be too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the challenge that a lot of leaders have is they feel like they have to tell people what to do.
Yeah.
And that often is problematic unless that person is tell directed. And even if they're tell directed, like I'm moderately tell directed. If you said, hey, could you go do this? Yeah, I'm all over that. I'll go do it. But the way that you say it, of course, makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, are you my mother? I mean, so, but I guess that what I'm suggesting is if I'm a new leader, I just know to tell people what to do, because maybe, like you said, it was either emulated to me or I don't know. So that's all I have in my toolkit, instead of asking people, well, what's your perspective? What do you think would work best? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And probing and asking questions, that's a sales technique.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
a lot of the best salespeople don't make statements.
Right. They ask a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, like a good doctor should, right? Every good doctor should ask you a lot of questions before they offer you any kind of treatment.
Well, it's it's the same in consulting too. The bottom line of consultancy is asking the questions that help you do a better service to your client than if you hadn't asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
It's
key in coaching too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. Well, I think we solved all the world's problems here today, Terry.
I would say so. Yeah, I feel really good about that. On my look back tonight, I'm going to say solve the world's problems between 3 and 4 p.m.
Hey, you know what? Put it up on your resume. I think it's a good resume builder. Career happy hour. Put it under your volunteer experiences or something.
Right. Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Anyway. All right, Terry. Well, hey, thanks for coming on again. And
thank you.
You have a great weekend, and maybe we'll see you next Friday. Sound fair?
Sounds fair. You
all
too.
Right,
have a great
care.
Weekend.
Yeah, be well. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Career Happy Hour. We do this every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. We'd like to see engagement and questions from you. So if you have questions, even if it's on the replay, go ahead and put those in the chat or the comments, and we're happy to answer those. I'm not sure Terry keeps an eye on those, but I certainly do. So you're welcome to put those in the chat or the comments, or send me an email. You can reach me on LinkedIn, or my email is readily available on LinkedIn, so you can send me email or direct message there. All right, folks, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday for Career Happy Hour. Bye now.